People have come in the room and it's a couple minutes after start time. So I'm going to go ahead and get us started and people can trickle in as they're able to. I hope you're all enjoying the first day of the NEMA conference. I know I already feel a little bit more reinvigorated, which I feel like I needed this burst of inspiration and ideas, being an eight-month pandemic here. It's starting to get tough, I think, for everybody. So this is good timing for me and hopefully for everybody else as well. My name's Lynn Thomson. I am Assistant Director of Education at Currier Museum of Art. I will be presenting with my colleague, Corie Lyford, who's Studio Outreach Manager. I know some of you have your institution listed next to your name. So that's great. We'd love to hear from you about where you're watching from, what institution you're working at. You can do that either in the chat feature or feel free to change your name on your little Zoom box, which if you hover over your box, you'll see 3 dots. If you click on those dots, you'll see an option to rename. So feel free to use that and share where you're joining us from in your institution. We are going to be presenting today on 3 different programs and share with you how we pivoted each of these programs during COVID. So before I dive into some of those details, I'm going to give you a little bit of history of the museum, and then I'll share with you what we did with these programs pre-COVID, and then Corie will share with you what we did to pivot during the pandemic. And then at the end, we're going to do a bit of hands-on activity with you all, and then we'll be doing some Q&A and having a good dialogue. So thumbs up if you can see the screen.
Lynn, can I just throw in a quick reminder about the Whova app?
Yes.
So just if anyone didn't join us earlier, if you have a question or want to add where you're from and a little bit of information, if you can do that within the Whova platform, the Zoom chat is disabled for this. So you can put any questions you have in Whova and we'll keep an eye on them, or let us know where you're coming from in the chat and we'll keep an eye on that too. So thank you.
Thank you, Brooke.
Yeah.
So as I mentioned before we get started, I'm going to give you a very super quick history of the Currier Museum of Art, just to give you a slight sense of who we are. We are out of Manchester, New Hampshire. We were able to become a museum because of these 2 wonderful people that you see here, Hannah and Moody Currier. They didn't own any art, but they loved art and felt strongly that New Hampshire needed to have an art museum. So they left their estate and provisions in their will that everything that they had be left and used to create a museum in New Hampshire. We opened up in 1929. And now the Currier Museum itself has many different buildings. I feel like we're growing every year or so. We're adding another building. This bottom left building here is one of our most recent acquisitions. It's a house we use for artists in residence. The top 2 houses on the left and then the middle are houses that were designed by architect Frank Lloyd Wright, 2 of the only houses normally open to the public for touring. The museum building you see on the right side, and then right in the center there, you see an image of one of our studio spaces at our Currier Art Center. The Currier Art Center offers studio programs in drawing, painting, ceramics, you name it. We have a class for all ages. The collection is historical through contemporary art, just giving you a very quick glimpse at some of the different work that we have. Sargent here, Andrew Wyeth, Picasso, and one of my favorites is a Fred Wilson piece. So if you've never been to the Currier Museum, hopefully what I just shared with you was quick enough to inspire you to want to come up to Manchester. We're about an hour north of Boston. So if you haven't come, please join us. We are open now. And while we offer many different programs at the museum, as I mentioned, we're going to be focusing on 3 programs, 3 of our wellness programs. The first of which is our Art of Hope program. So before COVID hit, that's what I'm going to be sharing with you. Art of Hope is a weekly program that we offer for caregivers and parents who have a loved one suffering from substance use disorder. The program model, in short, is art looking, conversation, followed by art making. So what really does that look like? So to give you some more specifics, the art looking is typically done in the gallery. We look at 1 or 2 pieces, and you can see an image of me here doing that in the space with one of our Art of Hope groups. And like all of our programs, the art looking is very conversation based in the gallery. So looking at a work of art and asking a response from the participants about what they're seeing in a piece, what reactions they have, how they might describe it, and really having a good 20 to 30 minutes in the galleries having this open dialogue and discussion with the group. Once we've done that, we head back into our lobby space, and we have parent mentors that help us to organize the program. A parent mentor is an individual that we work with. They've gone through their own personal experience with a loved one. In both of our parent mentor instances, it's their own children that have had substance use disorder. And so they had their own personal experience, and they've also been trained to facilitate and lead group discussions through Partnership for Drug-Free Kids. So when we get back into the lobby, these parent mentors lead the group in a discussion by sharing some personal experience or some things that they've done or resources that they have that help them through things specifically related to families struggling with this issue. And they really invite people that are there to ask questions or sort of share their own struggles that they might be dealing with currently at home. So we do that for maybe 30 minutes in the lobby space, and then we hand the program over to Corie or another art educator who leads the group in an art making activity. So the art activity program, I think, is really the time in the program where more intimate connections can happen, because you're sitting at a table of maybe 3 people. We sort of split the group up. You're able to chat with the group on a more personal level. So it could be anything. You're just talking about books, the weather, or maybe you're getting into more specifics about what you're struggling with at home. And it really allows for that social connection to develop, all while making art together. That's how we end the program. The quotes that you see on the screen here, these are some of the responses that people have given to us about what they get out of the program. And then just very quickly, a few of the barriers to this program are financial. So we try to eliminate that in 2 ways. We offer this for free, and then we also provide food. We give dinner for individuals. This happens right around dinner time at 6:30. So we want to make sure people are fed. That's all for free. And then the other big barrier is more of an emotional barrier, and it's that of stigma, which a lot of individuals feel related to this topic. So we don't require registration. We want people to just come, stop by, and not feel like they have to give last names or addresses if that's something that they're not comfortable with. So this is how we run the program before COVID. This is how we ran the program.
Thanks, Lynn, for getting us kicked off. And hi, everyone. Again, my name's Corie. I'm also from the Currier. I'm so happy to be with all of you virtually today. So I'm going to be talking about our COVID responses with the programs we're discussing today that all focus on wellness and healing. So in our COVID responses to the 3 programs, you're going to notice a common thread that at least our initial response did not involve Zoom, which is a little unusual because most of what we pivoted to did include Zoom. And for some of these, it may have been layered in later, but at least initially it wasn't. So I'm going to explain why. So for the Art of Hope, why not Zoom? We wanted first and foremost to hear from our participants who had already been with us regularly. So we sent out a survey. We wanted to know if people would be interested in a virtual version of the Art of Hope. So a Zoom version of what Lynn just described to all of you. And what we heard back was no. The answer was no. And that was because of privacy concerns. So as we've already gotten into a little bit, we discussed some really private information. There's a lot of stigma attached to this subject. So the first issue was with Zoom security itself. I think especially in the initial days of Zoom, we heard a lot about Zoom bombing, whether or not people who were not invited could actually join. So that was a concern. Next, participants were concerned about being overheard. Again, as we mentioned, a lot of people, since they're talking about a loved one, a lot of people who come to this program, they might live in the same house as the person suffering from substance use disorder. So how can they really have an honest conversation when that can potentially be overheard? And then conversely, the same issue for the other people on the Zoom, us as educators, what about us being overheard? So although everyone can see faces on the screen, we really can't tell what is going on behind the computer in anyone else's home. So it was hard for people to feel secure, which we totally understood. So for the Art of Hope program, we pivoted quickly to get the same information out to all of our participants on a weekly basis. And we were able to do that through email. So fortunately, we already had email addresses because when we were in person, we got in the habit of gathering them, if people were comfortable with sharing it, as they would come to their first program, so we could be in touch about different details that they might need to hear. So we were able to start doing that. And I'm going to share my screen so you can see this a bit closer.
We don't anticipate anybody reading this, so don't feel like you have to dig in and read this at all. It's just a visual example for you.
Yes, thank you, Lynn. Good point. So in our email format, each email has a theme for the week with all of the information, just like our in-person programming did. And it includes art looking. So here you're seeing a lesson plan with some lovely artwork where we're discussing the topic of love. So Lynn gives information about the piece along with discussion prompts, some ideas to think about, and a real silver lining of sharing artwork from our collection remotely rather than in the galleries is that we can use anything from our collection. At any given time, most of our collection is in storage, so we're able to talk about pieces that we don't see that often. And I know for me, some that I've actually never seen in person, and I've been at the museum for quite some time now. I'm going to move down in this document a bit so you see the information, and then we move into our activity. And I'll get down to the picture part of that. So this email format also includes art making. So for these lesson plans, I think about projects where folks will likely already have materials at home that they can use. So in this example, quilling, you just need glue and paper. I do add suggestions for alternate materials, such as using junk mail or maybe magazines to cut up. For this project, I use construction paper, but not everyone is going to have that at home, and that's perfectly fine. I also, as you can see, include step-by-step instructions along with photos of myself. You can see my hands doing the project. And we do invite people to share what they've made with us via email after they do it, if they're so inclined, because we would still love to see that. So these emails also include resources from our parent mentors. We still want to get that part of the session in. So in place of a discussion, they've shared from week to week a variety of articles, poems, writing exercises, and more. Without our in-person time, we still really want everyone to feel as if they're getting the healing and wellness benefits of the entire program as best we could during this time. So I'm going to stop sharing if you want to bring that PowerPoint back up, Lynn.
All right, thanks, Corie.
Thank you. So we recently added a new virtual format for the Art of Hope. So as I mentioned before, we have layered Zoom in with some of what we're talking about today. So our newly begun art looking and art making sessions held over Zoom take out the support group and resource portion of our program. So that is how we were able to get around the issues of privacy and those very understandable concerns. This is really a social time where we can all be creative and reconnect. And it's all without discussing why we know each other or the program that originally brought us together as a group. So this takes place over Zoom bi-weekly. We start by saying hi, reconnecting. It was so nice to see people after such a gap of time. And we try to have a fun social conversation where we can check in with each other. We then move into art looking. So Lynn will screen share our artwork, and we have the same type of conversation that we would have had in the galleries. So again, there are no wrong answers. And I know I love hearing new points of view on artworks, even ones that I've seen many times and that I've discussed with groups many times before. We love all those different points of view. And we end, as we did in person, with art making. So for this, I emphasize laid back lesson plans with very simple tools, because we want to keep the importance on that fun social engagement, and we want to be able to talk to each other. We're using the art as a way to find healing and wellness. That's true of all the programs that we're discussing today. And this that you see on screen right now is an example of blind contour drawing. If you've never done it, I suggest it. It's fun. We did this a few weeks ago. It was such a great way to connect. It's a simple enough exercise to do, but it challenges the artist to draw without actually looking at their paper. The results can be a little silly. We all had some good laughs together, which felt good, but it also can result in some really interesting sketches. And we also had some fun portraits of each other by the end of the night, which I know was a highlight for me. Oh, and Lynn is holding one up right now. That's perfect, Lynn. Thanks for sharing that.
Thanks, Corie. It was really fun. I have to say, I don't consider myself much of an artist, but it was great to do that activity. And so that portrait I just held up, that was Corie about 2 weeks ago.
Couldn't you tell?
Fabulous. So the next program that we want to share with you is our Memory Cafe program. This is a program that we offer that we really hope brings a social experience for people with memory loss or dementia. Typically, this program is held once a month in our classroom space as well as our galleries, and it really is aimed at providing a supportive environment, a safe environment, and a place where people, families, loved ones can come together and reconnect in a non-medical setting. So at each of these programs, we do a very similar setup in that we have art looking, and you can see a picture of me doing that here in the classroom. Again, very conversational. I really kick the program off by, before we even looking at the art, we kick it off by inviting people into the room. They'll come in, have some light refreshments that we provide, and we just talk, try to get them used to the space, comfortable, feeling relaxed. We'll talk about whatever might come up and just have light, casual conversation while folks get settled. And then we sit down and we look at that art. And I try to start the art looking by doing, again, trying to make people feel comfortable by letting them know no right or wrong answers. We're just there to have a good time and talk about what we like or don't like about a piece that we might be looking at. I assure all of them that I'm not the artist, so they can't offend me by sharing their honest opinion about a piece. And just try to have a back and forth dialogue. And we have a good time doing that, a lot of laughs. And like Corie, it's always so wonderful to hear the different experiences that people bring to the pieces. Once we do that for maybe 30, 40 minutes, Corie or another art educator will lead the group in some art making, and the activities that are chosen are always geared for a wide variety of skill level and ability. We've done everything from collage activities to painting on tiles to paper sculpture. So we had a lot of different options when we were in person. We could use a variety of materials, and we had access to a lot of different supplies. So that was pre-COVID. It's the program that we've had going on for many years. There was a good following, and we had a really good sort of rhythm to it pre-COVID.
So again, our initial response in the pandemic, we did not use Zoom. So for this program, why not Zoom? We were unsure of what level of technology people had access to, or if they did have the technology, what knowledge they might have of it and what ease of use they might have in that. So we decided to start instead by offering pre-recorded cafe programs. So that allows folks to watch it when they have the time and at their own pace, because you can pause, you can restart if needed. So this begins as our program in person included. We begin with art looking. So Lynn asks questions. You hear her voice at a nice, slow, easy to follow pace, easy to follow along as you're looking at the image on screen in that recording. And she asks questions as she would in person and encourages the viewers to discuss with each other at home. This also includes art making. So we go into that portion next. And for that, you hear my voice, a voiceover, along with a number of images showing a step-by-step demonstration of the art making. And I do a lot of images for this so people can really clearly see each step, anywhere from 30 to even 50 images, depending on which cafe we've done. And again, I use common materials and offer alternative suggestions so people can use whatever they have at home. I wouldn't want someone to have to go shopping for this or to feel like they can't participate. So it's intended to be quite flexible. The emphasis here is still on healing and wellness. There are no wrong answers. There's no wrong way to do the art lesson. It's all right. And this is about finding relaxation and connecting with others, this time in our homes, so people can be safe. We're still doing that through the arts. So unlike the Art of Hope Zoom format that we discussed a few minutes ago, where our virtual program was for people who we already knew due to the privacy reasons that we already discussed, this is a public offering that we want as many people as possible to have access to. So we share this on our website as well as on our YouTube channel, and we share out links to any community partners that can further give out this information as soon as they're ready. And in the moment, I'll share that in the chat. So again, that's on Whova.
I just shared it, Corie. So
oh, thanks,
it's
Lynn.
all set.
Perfect. So quick. All right, we can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So we have also now launched a live remote memory cafe program. So again, we did eventually layer in Zoom when we felt it was the right time. We have one for the public and one for our partners at Easter Seals of New Hampshire. And these programs each happen monthly. So just this month, we had our first public memory cafe via Zoom. We were so happy to see some familiar faces. This is a free program, as you can see here, but we do ask people to register so we know how many people we'll have on the Zoom meeting. And the format, again, is a laid-back conversation about the art. There are no wrong answers, and the emphasis is on healing and wellness. You don't need to rely on memory when looking at a piece of art and telling everyone what you see, although memories are often sparked during these conversations. And I also mentioned our partners at Easter Seals, New Hampshire. Their local location that we partner with is having a small in-person day program. But right now, outside vendors, instructors, any visitors are really not an option for safety reasons. So once a month, they join us via Zoom for their own cafe session. We usually have about 6 people, maybe a few more in the room who are suffering from some type of memory loss, along with a staff member. They're all together at their location. And the staff member is able to project up on screen the images that Lynn shares on the laptop. So everyone can see it really well. It's a little tricky that we can't see them, but they can see us and they can see the art pretty clearly. But the Easter Seal staff member is really key here in repeating questions to the group if needed, but also relaying their responses back to us, as it does get a little tricky for us to hear everyone in the room. So that's been one of our challenges that we're working through with that program. The group really looks forward to the events, and we've been so happy to be able to reconnect with people that we were used to seeing in person regularly.
I think that what's really been wonderful, particularly about the 2 programs and the last one that I'm going to mention really, is that all of them, there's been great partnerships that existed before COVID happened. So parent mentors and Partnership for Drug-Free Kids that I mentioned with Art of Hope and Easter Seals, we've had a partnership for many years. And even this next program, which I'll get into more detail, we had these relationships and this trust already built. So we were able to really reach out to our contacts there and ask them, you know, what do you need now that COVID is here? What questions do you have? How can we help you? Or conversely, we have this idea. What do you think of it? Can we test it out with you and a few of the folks, for example, at Easter Seals? And so it's given us this nice ability to be able to experiment a little bit, which I think we've all been experimenting so much in the last 8 months. And there's so many organizations around us that they're all in the same position, right? Like we're all kind of rethinking how we offer things. So for Easter Seals and Art of Hope, that was true. And then for this last program that we'll talk about, the partnership has also been really key in pivoting what we were able to do. So the last program that I want to talk about is one that we do in collaboration with the Manchester VA Medical Center. You're going to start to pick up on a theme if you haven't already. Essentially, we provide art looking, a social component, and art making for this group. And our goal is really to have veterans re-engage with the community, with others, and with themselves. So wanting them to be able to explore self-expression in a safe space, and getting them to connect with others that have a similar and shared experience. So similar to what we do with the other programs that we mentioned, the group comes in, we'll head right into the galleries. We look at 2 or 3 pieces, that open conversation dialogue, making them feel really comfortable to share their reactions, their feelings, their likes or dislikes, or how their own experience relates to a piece or doesn't relate to a piece. And it helps the group sort of connect and get to know one another through that conversation. We then head down to a classroom and we again just hang out and have some snacks together. So we're not necessarily talking about art at this point. We might not. We've had some great conversations about travel, had a lot of good conversations about music and concerts that people have been to, or sharing books that they're reading. And that's another great way that they get to know each other as individuals more than just this person's a veteran. So they get to know this person's a veteran, they like this music, they enjoy this book, they live in this neighborhood, they have these different types of hobbies. And so really trying to have those connections happen. When we're at a good place and it seems like it's time to transition over, Corie will lead the group in art making activity. You can see some beautiful ceramic bowls that one of our groups made here. We've done wet felting, we've done collage, the ceramics, we've done painting on glass. So again, being at the museum, having access to a lot of different materials that we could provide for the group was something that we enjoyed being able to do. We had started this program maybe 9 months before COVID happened, so it was still kind of a new program. In those 9 months, we'd offered several 5 or 6 week sessions. So I think we had maybe 4 sessions in total, 4 different veteran groups that had come through the program before COVID happened. And then we had to think about how we could switch it up.
So again, for this program, why not Zoom? And again, it comes down to privacy concerns. So with this group, Zoom was not an option, and it continues to not be an option. As we partner with the local VA, they have to be much more aware of privacy concerns than we often do in our museum programming. So they do not use Zoom, and they also don't share out veteran emails with us. We don't have access to any individual email addresses. So if we were to start a Zoom, we wouldn't be able to share that out. So we use their platform. It does run pretty similarly to Zoom with a few different little quirks to it, but it is HIPAA compliant. So that allows us to still be able to do our program. I know I miss being with everyone in person, and I miss that social snack time that Lynn was describing. But other than that, we really are able to run the program in a very similar way. We're still able to start by looking at art and having a fun conversation about it, such as the piece you see here on screen. We've had some great conversations about this recently. So we're still able to find wellness through the arts while connecting with each other socially. And I think probably everyone agrees that that is more important now than ever, to find ways to connect while in the middle of a pandemic. Another silver lining to remote programs is that we've been able to reach some homebound veterans, as well as one veteran who is confined to a hospital room. So we've really been able to engage with people who would not have been able to take part at all in an in-person program. And we do sometimes have family members join too, which are always happy to have more people join us. It's great when that can happen. So we also do art making in the program. And what you're seeing here on screen is a recycled art storage project. So what you see here used to be some pasta sauce jars and a shipping box. I think we all have a lot of shipping boxes lying around our homes today more than ever. But with some paint and some ribbon and some paper, this became art storage. So the art storage itself is the artwork, which is a fun way of going about things, a little bit of a different project. So this is a good example of lesson plans that rely on using what people had at home. And again, as I mentioned before, giving suggestions for alternatives. This emphasizes resourcefulness and finding art supplies within our own homes, even when we can't leave the house. So again, you might not have looked before at a jar that used to have pasta sauce in it and thought of it as an art supply, but maybe now you will. One challenge that this all brought up is, do we provide an art kit or do we not provide an art kit? So unlike the Art of Hope or the public cafe programs that we've talked about, with this program, we do know who will be participating in advance because the VA takes registrations. And we have experimented with running this as a drop-in program through the VA, but we still know the total list of people who have been invited. So even with the drop-in, we have a pretty good idea. So with other programs, some we're not talking about today, that we do with community partners, where again, we know who is coming, I've provided free art kits. They're available for curbside pickup so people can stay safe, but that means everyone has the same supplies going into an art making session. We did try this with one session with the VA, but we found that this group had a lot of safety concerns with the kits. That was from who had made them, to how it was getting to their house, if they would have to come into contact with somebody to receive it, and what kind of cleaning protocols were followed when creating that. So we found that really not using an art kit can sometimes be a better option. And in that case, a lesson like this works really well for a group not comfortable getting the art kit, because this is very flexible for what people have in their own homes. And of course, we want people to feel safe and comfortable. That's very important.
So now that Corie and I have talked a lot, we want to turn this around a little bit and really sort of show you by example what this looks like in the virtual format. And one of the questions that came in through Whova is if there's specific techniques that I use when I have the conversations in the galleries, having those open-ended conversations. VTS, visual thinking strategies, is certainly something that I use, but not very strictly. So it's sort of a jumping off point, and then I sort of let the conversation happen naturally, but following good teaching practice and trying to repeat what people have said so that I'm sure that I understood it correctly and that everybody in the group can hear it. So hopefully that answers the question that came in through Whova. I'd love to do that here with all of you. So this is a piece that we have looked at with several of the groups that Corie and I just talked about. It's a piece that a lot of the groups, it sparks a lot of conversation. So I'm hoping it will do the same here. I'd love to hear from you, so feel free to unmute yourself and share with me what you see in this piece. I can try to also keep an eye on the chat box. So if you're not super comfortable unmuting yourself, I'll try to keep an eye on the chat. And again, no wrong answers.
I don't mind getting us kicked off, Lynn, while everyone's taking a look. I know when I see this piece, I see a lot of shapes. That's the first thing that comes to my mind.
Great.
I
There are
see a
indeed
hammock,
a lot.
and I think it's nap time.
You see, I'm sorry, what? And it's a nap
I see
time?
I see a hammock, and I think it's nap time.
Can you describe where in the piece you see something that looks like a hammock? Is it the lower left?
Yeah, it's down in the lower left, and some people might think it's kind of a banana shape.
Yeah, I love that shape in this piece. That's one of the shapes that really stands out to me. And I love seeing it as a hammock. It looks way more comfortable than the folding chair I'm sitting in right now.
Yeah.
Great. What else do people see?
I love how colorful it is. It sort of reminds me of like a party or a celebration or something.
Great. So lots of colors. And I love that idea of it being a party, the bright colors and the sort of like movement, I think lends itself to that idea as well. That's great. Thank you.
I see some like vertical structures with supports that, and one looks like a wind direction. I forget what those things are called. And then another one towards the bottom right looks like it has a tree branch attached to it.
Do you guys see my cursor?
Mhm.
Great. So Lily, I think I'm pointing at what you were just mentioning, but please tell me if I misunderstood. So the structure with like a tree branch, and at the top, almost right in the center, another sort of structure with maybe a wind chime, like not a wind chime. What are those things at the top of the house that have the directionals?
Weather vane.
Thank you. Did I get that right, Lily?
Yeah, and then a variety of other just things that like are sticking up in the air with things coming off of them, like signaling structures.
Great. So a lot of things sort of coming out and look structural.
I also wonder about the little thing down on the right that kind of looks like a Saturn or a planet orbiting the rest of it.
Yeah, this little shape sort of off to itself here on the
The
right
only
side.
disconnected thing on the whole page.
Yes. Yeah, it is. It's kind of off by itself, and it's probably hard to see here on this slide, but there's a little signature down there from the artist. But I agree. I think it also looks like a planet. I've had some other people say it looks like half of a marble too.
The triangle in the top left, it kind of makes me think that the whole, it just sort of looks like a spaceship that's taking off up into the left to me.
I love that idea of a spaceship taking off. Did anybody watch the launch last night? No, all right. I just geeked out a little. I may have watched it. But the Saturn down here and this idea of a launch in this triangle certainly sort of pointing off to the left. There's some nice movement there. Thanks, Catherine. Any other thoughts or reactions to this piece?
I'll say I actually see an entire planet in that a lot of video games on like some of the menus will have the video game world in a smaller version with like buildings and stuff made larger. So it reminds me of that.
That's great. It's like a planet, lots of video games with inner worlds within that. I'm always I think it was Brooke, you mentioned the color on this piece, and I'm always so amazed at this piece. The color stands out so much, despite the fact that it's predominantly a white neutral piece. Any other thoughts before we move to the art making portion of the program, which is going to be really fun?
I guess I'd just like to acknowledge the wedge of cheese in the lower left.
It's going against a cheese grater.
To me, it reminds me of an unfinished coloring book page, but it still looks great. Yeah.
Do you want to go in and finish it off?
I'm tempted, but then I like the empty spaces too.
Yeah. I agree. I will put the name of this piece in the chat, but just for your reference and to also just acknowledge the artist, this piece is by Robert Newman. It's called The Pile, and it was made in 1976. It's mixed media on paper, but I will add that to the chat box in case anybody wants to look it up. I find this piece to be really, really fun, and with more time, and what I often do with the groups is we'll look at it and I'll zoom in, which is another benefit to doing things remotely, is that you can really zoom in and get closer to a work of art in a way that we'd get yelled at for doing in a gallery for getting too close. So that's another thing that we get to do. And this is a really fun piece to zoom in on.
Thanks for sharing that, Lynn, and thanks for your great comments, everybody. So nice to hear from people. I loved the comment that piece looks like an unfinished coloring page. I totally see that. That resonates with me. I do want to go in and finish coloring it in, and fortunately the Currier will not let me do that. I think I would get in a lot of trouble because white space is good too. As you can see from the screen now, though, you can see that my aesthetic is a bit more filling the page with color. So I really like that comment. So you're going to get to do some art making here today too. We're going to do some tracing household objects. So I'm going to start by telling you why I like this project. Then we're going to get to take a little stretch break, which hopefully everyone can use that by now, and you can all look forward to that. And then we'll make some art together. And at that point, we can continue to answer any questions you may have. So ones that have already been shared in Whova, in the chat, or in the Q&A, or at that point, folks can certainly unmute and go ahead and just ask us through Zoom. So why I like this lesson for wellness programs and specifically for remote programs. This is easy to do. You can use anything that you have at home, and you can carry on a conversation while you do it. No matter what tools you use, you'll have an interesting composition of shapes and colors by the end of this. You can relax into the project, and you can really find healing and the kind of meditative qualities of drawing and coloring. It's such a shame that in our society, coloring sort of goes away when you become an adult. We should all keep coloring. I really encourage that. So when we do projects like this remotely, I encourage folks to keep working on these even after our meetings are over. They can be a great way to find relaxation again during the rest of your week. And another reason for doing this with remote programming is that it shows up well on camera. So I have made the switch to using mostly markers for a lot of the remote drawing projects that I lead people in. People at home, and of course all of you today, can use whatever materials you have, but the marker shows up really well on camera versus pencil. So I have made the switch to doing that. And you can see that in the sample that's up on screen. So before we dive into this project, we're going to give our hands a little bit of a warm up. So Lynn, if maybe you can stop screen sharing for a moment for this. Great. And if you are comfortable turning your camera on, we would love to see you. If you're more comfortable with your camera off, that is perfectly okay too. So we're going to do a little warm up with our hands, since we're going to be using our hands in a minute to do our artwork. So I'm just holding them up, and I'm going to start stretching. I'm closing into a fist. I'm also stretching my fingers out. As you watch, don't feel like you have to do exactly what I'm doing. You should do what feels comfortable with your own hands and your own body. I recently did some yoga on Zoom during a program, and the instructor shared, don't concentrate on trying to imitate my posture, do what feels right to you. And I thought that was so helpful, because I'm not a yoga instructor, so why would I be able to do exactly what she's doing? I'm going to start kind of wiggling my fingers around, maybe like you're playing a piano. Clearly I don't play the piano from the way I'm wiggling my fingers. Yeah, I might squeeze my fist again. I'm going to move down into my wrists and start rolling around like that. I'm starting to feel a little bit of a warm up, which is great. It's kind of chilly here in Manchester, New Hampshire today. So this feels good to get the blood flowing a little bit more. I might move down into my elbows a little bit too. Now it looks like I'm doing a chicken dance. So continuing that warm up and maybe even shake out your hands a little bit. This feels good. All right, thank you guys. And Lynn, maybe we can put that back up on screen real quick. It's important to move. I've been trying to incorporate that more into programs where our bodies are intended to move and we just don't move around as much as we used to in a pre-pandemic world. I know for me, a lot more time is spent sitting at my kitchen table than I ever would have expected. So it's good to get some movement and get some warm up in. And in a moment or two, you're going to get to do even more than that because you'll have to get up and gather some things. So we're going to be pulling a few tools in a moment to work from. So you're going to need just a regular old piece of paper. This is just plain white paper. You know, computer paper works. It could be something that has color to it too. And a pencil or a pen, whatever you use, whatever tool is lying around that you can use to trace. And then the other things you'll need, if you want to add color, as I do, you can use anything for that. So I have a set of Sharpies, colored pencils are great, crayons are great. It can also be black and white, that's perfectly fine. One really fun suggestion that a teacher gave recently, especially since people are often sitting in sort of their home office space, highlighters. Those are a great way to add color in as well. And the final thing that I need, or things I should say, are some objects to trace. So when I lead groups in this, people can trace anything that they want. Probably at any time, we can all grab a few things right within our reach to trace. I do like to take a few minutes, stroll around my home and kind of make it into a scavenger hunt. So I'll give you a few examples of things that I've already gathered. I'm going to hold this up to the camera. I collect hobnail milk glass, it's called. So it's a white glass and it has this texture to it, which is really fun. So this is an antique juice cup. So I like this for tracing, especially because depending on if I trace the top or the bottom, I'm going to get two different size circles. So it's a great shape. I love my fall decorations. So I pulled one of my pumpkins today. It has a fun curvy shape and the stem on top I think will look really cute. I of course love art. So I like to go into my art supplies and pull things out. Scissors are a great, interesting shape and something that most of us have at home. You can also change the shape depending on if these are open or closed. Be careful, of course. And I also have a couple of different types of paint. So in my own artwork, I like doing acrylic paintings. So a tube of acrylic, which is a different shape from the other things that I have so far. And then I also have a set of watercolors. So this shape is a little more plain, although there's still some fun details here in the top opening. But I like a few bigger shapes too, because when I get into the tracing, I really want to break up my paper as much as I can. So we don't want to run out of time. We want to leave time for answering any questions that people have. So let's take just a quick 2 minutes. And I encourage everyone to get up, take a nice big stretch, go ahead and move around the space. Need to grab a quick cup of coffee, pet your dog, hug your cat, you can do that too. And then let's meet back in 2 minutes and I'll show you how I do this.
Corie, every time we do this together, I always love seeing the different things that you pull because it's always a little bit different. Your pumpkin is adorable.
Thank you. I
grabbed,
love the fall decor.
I grabbed a stapler.
Oh, good. That's a good one. I've used a stapler before. I didn't pull that today, but that's a good item.
And then I also grabbed one of the salt dough pieces that Corie has led a virtual group in making. So just thought I would share some of the things that I grabbed that were right around me so people could see.
And I think we're pretty close on our time. Give everyone just another moment. Oh, there it goes. You probably hear my alarm that I just set off. All right, so if people want to put their camera back on, go ahead and do that if you would like to and if you feel comfortable. So I got to have a little jump start. I had a little head start since I already had my items gathered. So I can show you what I started to do. So again, this is a very easy project to lead because you're just tracing objects. So I've started with a few. You can probably tell that I did a pair of scissors, and then I have one circle shape that came from my milk glass, and I have a shape that came from an acrylic tube of paint. You can see that I'm starting to layer these. I'm putting these on top of each other a bit so they can overlap. And I would continue to do this and add a variety of shapes moving around my paper. So it really breaks up the space into a lot of different areas. And I get some unique and interesting shapes. And then I go ahead and add color because I love to add color to artwork. And then it'll look a bit more similar to what we had up on screen earlier. And again, I love what we talked about with the pile and thinking of it as a type of coloring sheet, because this type of project really is like making your own coloring page. And then you can choose as much color or as much white paper as you would like to have in there. So now it would be great if you all continue during your drawing, but as I said before, we like doing projects that encourage conversation at the same time. So we want to open it up to any questions, anything you haven't shared in the chat or in the Q&A on Whova yet, feel free to ask us now. And I'm going to take a look at those myself.
I know one of the questions that came in was somebody asked if we've been successful in getting participants to interact with each other over Zoom or the virtual platform that we're using. Particularly thinking about the programs where they don't know each other. That I think is probably one of the biggest challenges of doing the virtual programs. The social aspect to all of these wellness programs that we talked about is really key and essential. So where the folks don't know each other, particularly the veteran program, what helps that program is that we run it in 4 to 6 week sessions. So the first week might be a little bit quieter, and then the second week there's a little more chatting amongst the participants, and then by the end they're feeling very comfortable and connected with each other. And then for the Memory Cafe program, both with Easter Seals and the public program, and then the Art of Hope that we do on Monday nights, we're getting folks that have been coming to the programs for a while, so we know them and they know each other and feel pretty comfortable. So hopefully that answers that really good question that somebody put out. It doesn't tell me who it was, so whoever posted that, thank you.
That was a great question. Thank you, Lynn, for answering that one. It is definitely a tricky part, and I know in some of our other programs that we're running, particularly where people don't know each other already, a good first step is when people interact with us, and that happens pretty quickly at the educator interacting with the people participating. But that is sort of the next step that gets difficult, getting people to mesh with each other. And it's just such a different way of meeting people, but having that time together builds relationships.
I would love to hear from anybody in the group that has done a virtual program in a way that has really brought people together. We're always looking for tips and tricks. So if somebody has them, we'd love to hear them. if not, we're also open to other questions. I saw another question, I think, in the chat about how we publicize these programs. These are all part of our community outreach programs. We really do a lot of reaching out to different organizations to sort of grassroots market. We have them on our website, describe them as wellness programs, and just try to be really upfront about what the program is and what the goal is. So if it's for folks with memory loss or dementia and their caregivers to have a social experience together, and really making sure that when we're talking about it, we're getting those key aspects into the description. So hopefully that helps you. I think it was Ken that answered that or asked that.
I'm also seeing in the chat, we have someone sharing, I have a friend who works in the field of addiction and would love to see a website or flyer to get more information. So if you go to currier.org, you are going to be able to see some information on the Art of Hope program. And I believe through Whova, you can message Lynn or myself with any more questions if you prefer direct contact. And just in case I am not stating that correctly, I'm going to go ahead and share my email address in the chat.
Does anybody want to share their tracing object piece so far? I've gotten only a little bit done, but I'm starting. Oh, I like that horse, Sarah.
Oh, very cool.
Oh, Erin, very nice. You're working fast, Chris. You got some color in there.
Yeah.
Catherine, I like it.
Very cool.
I like
Share
your
mine again, too.
repetition of pattern, Catherine, that created that. Looks very nice.
It ended up being an octopus.
I love that. These become kind of like a Rorschach test too, because you start seeing some things in it that you may not have intended to at first.
So I think that we are just about at time. I hope that you all enjoyed this, and the art activity is something that feel free to keep working on throughout the NEMA conference. I know it's easy to get distracted by websites and emails and other work distractions. So one way to potentially avoid that is you can sort of color in. It's something that you can do pretty easily while listening to other sessions, and hopefully having a wonderful week at the NEMA conference. As Corie mentioned, please do reach out with any questions that you have, and thank you for coming to the session. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for being here, everybody. Keep doing those hand warming exercises too.
Thanks, Lynn and Corie. It was great.
Bye, everyone.